And the Black Girls with Queen. I wanted to give a shout out to Ring IQ Boxing, and remember to tune in to the motherfucking relay.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, and now it's time for our weekend recap. We're going to kick it off with an announcement that was made on the zone card, the undercard, Bam Rodriguez's fight. Claressa Shields will be taking on Hannah Gabriels for a second time. Multi-weight champion Hannah Gabriels.
This isn't what I was expecting.
I half expected them to announce a Shields versus Miller fight, even a Shields versus Green fight, but Shields versus Gabriels too, a rematch between them. I don't see the point or purpose behind that. Claressa Shields herself, in her own words, stated, "She's the only woman to scare my fans when she knocked me down in Detroit."
It was what, 3 or 4 years ago?
This fight, this rematch comes to us as a result of things not working out between Claressa and Savannah for a second fight. Claressa Shields being insistent that she wanted the rematch with Savannah to be in America.
I told you that wasn't going to go down. Not if you're relying on Boxer and Sky Sports to foot the bill. They're based out of the UK, not the USA.
So you know that didn't materialize, and neither did a Natasha Jonas fight.
The talks of Natasha potentially defending her 3 alphabet titles against Claressa, but that didn't materialize either. According to Claressa, Natasha wanted the kind of money you can retire on.
It's according to Clarissa. According to Natasha,
so I always wanted to fight in March, and that didn't happen. So that was one thing, but that didn't happen anyway. So the only other fight was going to be Claressa anyway. So. Yeah. The only thing then was the money, and she kept going on about money I was asking for, and I know what I've got, I know what she got, and I know what she was gonna get for this next one, and I wasn't asking for that, but I was asking for more than I was offered for Terry Harper, which I didn't get. So, it was around about the same figure, and I just believe the Claressa fight's a bigger fight than Terry Harper, and if she doesn't, that's on her. But I don't have to. I don't have to take that fight if I don't want to. If I don't think that it's right for me, I'm not going to. And if I don't think I'm not getting paid for, I think it's a higher risk fight. And commercially, like she says, in America and in the UK, it's a lot bigger. So then, if that's the case, then I need to get paid more for it. And I don't get what she doesn't understand about that.
it's both sides of the story, more or less. Both Claressa and Natasha are pointing to money as the reason that the fight did not materialize. Now, whether or not you think that Natasha Jonas was being unreasonable, wanting a particular dollar amount for a Shields match, I'll leave such judgments up to you. But both sides seem to point the money as being an issue.
Natasha said she feels that a Shields fight would be bigger than a Harper fight, a Harper rematch. I don't actually agree with that. I think Jonas versus Harper does better business in the UK than Jonas versus Shields.
Because the boxing community at large would interpret that as a more even fight where anything can happen, because it's for undisputed and they know what they're getting. The first fight was a barn burner. The second one would be perceived as one as well.
No, I don't think that Shields versus Jonas would be bigger than Harper versus Jonas. The only thing bigger about Shields versus Jonas...
There'd be bigger risks.
Bigger in that sense.
Bigger in that respect. If there's anything bigger about Shields versus Jonas as opposed to Harper versus Jonas, it's that a Shields fight would come with bigger risks to Natasha than a Harper fight would.
She's a bigger woman than Terry Harper. She's a bigger woman than Natasha.
Thus explaining Natasha Jonas's desire to be paid in kind. She'd want a bigger purse for the bigger risk. And needless to say, the fight didn't materialize. Now Claressa is going to be facing Hannah Gabriels for a second time. And in light of all of this,
the story is she picked Hannah Gabriels. She's choosing to fight her for a second time on the premise that she knocked her down a couple of years ago.
For being honest with you, that's hardly precedence for a second fight, in my humble opinion. That's hardly precedence for a rematch. A more logical choice, in my opinion, would have been unbeaten Raquel Miller.
Claressa Shields' domestic rival.
I've got to be honest with you here.
Yeah.
I'm not really a fan of this fight.
Yeah.
Not really a fan of this rematch. Hannah Gabriels might have gave Claressa a decent-sized fight some years ago, but some years later, she's only fought once in the last 3 years. She sat out all of 2020, only fought once in 2021 and sat out all of 2022.
Just one fight in the last 3 years.
It's been well over a year since she last fought. This fight is going to be held in the middleweight division. Middleweight, that's 160 pounds. Hannah's been campaigning up there at light heavyweight.
This fight's being held in the middleweight division for what are Clarissa Shields' belts at 160, the undisputed crown. Hannah's going to have to boil down to 160 pounds, and she hasn't made that weight.
She hasn't fought anywhere near middleweight in many, many years.
Here today at 40 years old, having not seen action in well over a year, I don't imagine that's going to be easy for Hannah Gabriels to do, getting down to 160.
It's hard for me to see the point and purpose in this fight, point and purpose in this rematch. I just don't see what the end game is here.
I don't.
She's crossing over from Boxer and Sky Sports over to DAZN.
What's the end game?
If you want to categorize this rematch as a keep busy fight, a takeover fight, you can, but what is it a segue to? Now that Clarissa is boxing on the DAZN platform and she's off Sky,
Savannah Marshall's on Sky.
Dimitri Salita has taken Clarissa Shields over to DAZN.
Doesn't that put distance between her and a second Marshall fight, a rematch?
You take her over to DAZN, she's fighting Hannah Gabriels again as a segue to what?
I do understand the need to keep Clarissa Shields active, keep her busy.
I get that, I understand it, but as stated, I would have rathered a Raquel Miller fight over a Hannah Gabriels fight. Raquel has at least seen action in the last 12 months. Hannah didn't fight all of last year.
I don't know, maybe they can segue into a Miller fight afterwards?
Set to go down June 3rd in Detroit.
I wasn't expecting this announcement.
But there it is. Shields versus Gabriels 2 is underway, and you can make of that what you will. Now, even though last night Clarissa Shields' next fight was announced on the DAZN platform, set to go down there, Clarissa herself was in attendance for the Shakur Stevenson versus Yoshino fight, that card over there in New Jersey. And on the undercard, we saw unbeaten Jared Anderson take on George Arias.
I like what I saw. I'm really high on this kid. Jared Anderson, he's the real thing.
In the beginning, at the start of this thing, you notice that Jared Anderson, he's a taller guy than George Arias, a longer guy, and he was holding the center of the ring. As George Arias fought off the back foot, moving lateral, staying on the perimeter of the ring,
Jared Anderson held the center.
stayed center ring, holding it and getting off straight shots from the outside because as the taller, longer fighter, he could afford to. He didn't need to be right up on George Arias to touch him, mindful of the counter shots.
You could see that's what George was looking for. He was looking to land a big counter. He was looking to catch Jared Anderson coming in.
Trying for very big hooks, sweeping shots that fell short of the mark. Jared Anderson did a very good job of managing the distance and punishing George Arias with straight punches from the outside.
Pumping out that jab.
I feel like George Arias fought the wrong fight, him being the shorter, stumpier fighter, boxing from the outside and looking to land a big counter. It made him a sitting duck for those straight punches, and that's what we saw.
As the shorter, stumpier fighter, the closer he is to his opponent, the further away he is from danger. But George wasn't coming forward. He was moving lateral.
The accuracy of Jared Anderson was a big factor.
You know, George Arias, he was trying for some shots, some big shots, very big shots. Big left hooks, looping rights, and he fell short of the mark.
Jared Anderson would take a half step back to stay out of range of those punches, then instinctively tie him up, and rightfully so. That's what you want to do. You want to smother this guy before he gets any momentum going, then get back on your jab.
Keep punishing him, keep breaking him down.
And keep control of the fight, the pace at which the fight is being fought, and where the fight is being fought. Jared Anderson did a very good job of that.
Very good ring generalship. We even saw a bit of switch hitting from Jared Anderson, switching from orthodox to southpaw.
You know, I heard Tim Bradley say that Jared Anderson was looking lackadaisical in spots, but I saw a guy keeping a lid on things, keeping control of a situation that perhaps a brawl would have favored George Arias more than a boxing match. But Jared Anderson, he kept it a boxing match, using the jab.
Kept it a boxing match, kept punishing George Arias.
In what was a battle of the unbeatens, unbeaten Jared Anderson versus then unbeaten George Arias.
The fight only lasted 3 rounds. Jared Anderson started stringing shots together towards the tail end of the 3rd round. Body shots, uppercuts, penetrating the guard of George Arias and punishing him. So much so that George was wobbled.
You know, he took the shots, he didn't go down and he didn't go out, but he was on unsteady legs, and you could see that as he walked back to his corner at the end of the 3rd round, and they called it.
Jared Anderson made short work of this guy. It only took 3 rounds.
To George Arias' credit, he was calling to go back out there. He wanted to do at least one more, but his own corner, he knew what time it was, and he saw what direction this fight was going, so pulled him out.
The referee waved it off.
As soon as Jared Anderson started stringing punches together, as soon as he finally decided to let his hands go, that's as soon as it took for him to hurt George Arias and bring this contest to a screeching halt.
I see a bright young star in Jared Anderson. I see a fighter with a bright future.
And I see a fighter that has certain ingredients that your average heavyweight today doesn't have. He's more athletic and quicker and sharper than a lot of these big lumbering lummoxes in the men's heavyweight division, believe it or not. That's an advantage, a bit of speed. It is a game changer. And Jared Anderson has that. Congratulations to him for continuing to impress.
Went out there against another unbeaten up-and-comer like himself and made it look easy.
We then come to the main event of that same card, young Shakur Stevenson's lightweight debut. Two-division champion Shakur Stevenson aiming to become a champion at a third.
In previous years, I've heard gripes that Shakur, he's a great boxer, but he's not big on power. He doesn't rack up knockouts. And I've maintained throughout that Shakur Stevenson, he's a very young fighter. And as he maturates and his body grows, you're going to see an increase of power. That as he moves up in weight,
he's going to start hurting guys. He's going to start knocking guys out. Not having to boil down to 126, not having to boil down to 130, 135.
He'll be a lot more comfortable there. He'll have more energy. He'll have more power. We saw that last night.
Really put it on Yoshino, who got off to a strong and aggressive start, trying to crowd Shakur Stevenson.
Yoshino's a mid-range to inside guy.
Yoshino, who answered the call when some others would not, with Devin Haney being preoccupied with the Solo Lomachenko fight, Gervonta Davis being preoccupied with Ryan Garcia, Isaac Cruz walking away from an order.
A WBC-mandated fight between Isaac Cruz and Shakur Stevenson. Isaac's team walked away. They didn't want it.
And some mention of a William Zepeda fight. William Zepeda, a Golden Boy Promotions fighter. Oscar, in so many words, said he wanted to let that one marinate. He didn't want to do that fight at that time. Enter Yoshino, who answered the call when some others would not.
You look at the fight and you say that Yoshino don't belong in the same ring with Shakur Stevenson, but you've got to work with what you've got.
In the first round, you see Yoshino trying to mix it up with Shakur Stevenson, mid-range to inside as Shakur manages the distance, not retreating.
He stayed with Yoshino,
circling him, not giving up the center of the ring
so much as circling him.
Maintaining distance while simultaneously maintaining the pocket instead of exiting it the way many pure boxers often do, to circle away from their opponents and stay on the perimeter of the ring. Shakur didn't do that.
He didn't retreat.
He's not your average pure boxer. I dare say that between this performance, between last night's performance and what we saw the fight before that in the Robson-Conceição fight, I dare say that Shakur Stevenson's base style is a hybrid style, a hybrid of a pure boxer and a boxer puncher, because he's not actually afraid to let his hands go, and he's quite comfortable in the pocket where many other pure boxers are not.
Not your average pure boxer. There's nothing average about Shakur Stevenson, and tack on that he's a southpaw. That really complicates things for his opponents.
The second round, we saw Shakur Stevenson turn it on, picking off Yoshino,
scoring a knockdown.
From the second round onward, as soon as Shakur Stevenson decided to let his hands go, he was in control, full control, onward.
By not exiting the pocket, by not retreating, instead maintaining the pocket and getting shots off in there.
Rolling punches off the shoulder and countering in kind, nailing Yoshino square.
Stopping him in his tracks right there.
Before he can get any momentum going, a mid-range to inside guy like a Yoshino, that's what he wants, that's what he needs.
Momentum.
Shakur didn't give him that.
Shakur stood his ground. A mistake that many pure boxers often make, fighting reactionary fights to what are very aggressive mid-range to inside fighters like a Yoshino. The mistake that pure boxers often make is they let the other guy dictate the pace and dictate the action and what's going to go on. Shakur didn't do that. He initiated.
He didn't wait. He starts stepping into his punches. He starts initiating the action. He starts backing up Yoshino.
Counter punches over the top of Yoshino's jab. Body shots just under Yoshino's elbow.
Some very short, sharp hooks.
Shakur Stevenson is known as a defensive fighter, defensively minded fighter, but offensively, he's got a nice arsenal.
He's fluid. He's not limited to boxing from the outside behind straight punches and simply staying behind his jab, trying to fight the fight from a safe distance. Not Shakur. He can fight on the inside just as well as he can fight on the outside.
Not your average pure boxer.
I think his feet are a big part of the reason. Those subtle movements, those pivots and shifts as opposed to broad strokes, giving up real estate and staying on the perimeter of the ring.
Shakur don't have to stay on the outside. He's good on the inside.
I think it's because he's got dog in him. Some pure boxers don't.
Some of them just want to box. Some of them quite content just winning a ho-hum points decision.
He shows aggression. He shows spite, landing several clean shots en route to a sixth-round referee stoppage. The referee had seen enough. Yoshino was eating a lot of clean punches, a lot of clean shots. The stoppage felt early.
So you could clearly see where the fight was going, and what was about to happen.
Congratulations to young Shakur Stevenson for a dominant lightweight debut. I'm impressed. We then come to the main event of the Showtime card that also happened yesterday, a main event that can be summed up with one big left hook that got through on Sebastian Fundora. In what was a WBC interim junior middleweight title fight, the winner of the fight would go on to become the mandatory challenger for Jermall Charlo by way of the WBC. And up until yesterday, that was Sebastian Fundora.
Can't say I didn't see this coming.
I've said it many times here on the channel, on many occasions, that Sebastian Fundora, towering over the vast majority of junior middleweights out there, he doesn't actually use his size to his advantage. He's a mid-range to inside fighter, a phone booth fighter.
Even though he's got all that height and all that reach.
Doesn't use it. He favors trading punches mid-range to inside, and yesterday, he finally paid for it.
39 seconds into the 7th round.
You see Sebastian Fundora attempting to close the distance in order to get off a left uppercut, and mid-punch,
Brian Mendoza stings him with a hard left hand of his own. The problem with a fighter as tall, as long as Sebastian Fundora fighting a fight at that range is that the taller guy with the longer arms won't be able to string punches together as the shorter, stumpier fighter with the shorter arms. Because their arms are shorter,
they can string combinations together faster, shoot from the hip faster than the taller, longer guy. Because at that range, the taller, longer guy needs more room to work, but the smaller guy
you can shoot from the hip.
Connect with hard shots, because at that range, the shorter guy's punches don't even have to travel as far. Sebastian Fundora, for the longest time now, has been sacrificing his height and his length to trade punches in the pocket, which really doesn't behoove him, and he found that out the hard way last night.
And I've always interpreted this as Sebastian Fundora selling out.
That because Sebastian ain't really got a good jab to help him manage the distance and keep a fighter at arm's length, he doesn't really try to. He collapses the pocket himself to trade punches deep in the pocket.
Like what you see from Brandon Figueroa, like what you used to see from Jarrett Hurd. And that's the kind of thing that works up until it doesn't.
Selling out like that. That you're favoring exchanges, trading blows mid-range to inside because you ain't got the ring generalship to control the fight and use your height, use your length from the outside.
It's almost a coping mechanism.
Not that a fighter shouldn't be able to bang in the booth when the situation calls for it, but with Sebastian, it always seemed like a coping mechanism for me. A fighter with that kind of height and that kind of length.
Never using it.
There are moments when a fighter's going to have to assert themselves. You don't want to be limited to simply boxing from the outside, but the same is true in reverse. You don't want to be limited to banging on the inside. You want to be able to do a bit of both, and with Sebastian...
See how the guy gets caught? He tries for a left uppercut. There's a gaping hole on the right side of his face, and Mendoza...
he gets off a left hand of his own, a left hand upstairs before Sebastian's punch even lands.
Yeah.
Buckles Sebastian Fundora with a hard counter left hand upstairs, follows up with a salvo of punches, and flattens him.
Been saying it for a while. It's only a matter of time. It's only a matter of time before Sebastian Fundora ends up getting stretched out like Jarrett Hurd got stretched out by Julian Williams well over a year ago.
That day has arrived. Can't say I'm surprised. Can Sebastian recover from this? Will they run it back?
He's got a lot of bad habits.
Tendencies that need tightening up should he so decide to run it back with Brian, and I don't know that he can do that in just one fight.